we didn't have the connections, we didn't have the money, any of it to be able to pull something like this off. And my parents literally sacrificed so much.
Sydney Sweeney has been mapping out her future since the age of 12 years old. Now, after begging her parents to let her audition for a zombie indie film shooting in her hometown, well, Sydney would win the part and get bitten by the acting bug. Now, a year later, she'd convince her entire family to pack up and move south so that she could accomplish her dreams of becoming a Hollywood superstar. Only things, they didn't exactly go as she imagined. And her family, they would actually end up breaking apart instead. But Sydney, she stuck with it and she turned her dreams into a reality, and now she is riding a massive wave of popularity thanks to her role in HBO's mega series. Of course, I'm talking about Euphoria. Now, just last week, it was announced that Sydney Sweeney got engaged, and a generation of male admirers, well, they all cried for her all at once. But prior to breaking hearts, this girl used to actually kick butt in MMA. So stay tuned to This Before They Were Famous to find out more. Sydney Bernice Sweeney, well, she was born on September 12, 1997 in Spokane, Washington. Now, growing up about 18 miles from the mountainous region of Idaho, well, Sydney, she filled her earliest days with a healthy dose of school and sport. Now, you want to know what sports she played? Well, how about pretty much all of them? Seriously, the list of athletics she participated in, it was as long as my arm. She would run the gauntlet from golf to softball to soccer, skiing, waterboarding, basketball, and ballet. She'd also do some dirt biking. But out of all these extracurriculars, well, Sydney, her real passion, it was for MMA.
I trained with Ronda Rousey senseis.
What?
I did competitions. I got first place fighting all guys.
What?
Yeah, I bet a lot of you guys didn't see that one coming. Now, from the time she was only 13 years old, well, Sydney, she began visiting her local dojo several times a week, and she reveled in the thrilling rush it would provide for her. She told GQ, "I love the element of surprise in that no one would think I'd be able to do something like that. I felt very capable and powerful." Now, fortunately, MMA wasn't the only activity that provided Sydney with a rush of excitement. So did acting. Now, as a kid, well, Sydney, she would spend a lot of her free time living in her own imaginary worlds. With, no acting courses in her high school, well, her first real opportunity to learn about the art form, it came when an indie zombie picture began shooting in her hometown. Taking some serious initiative for a 12-year-old, well, Sydney, she wrote up a 5-year business plan and she presented it over PowerPoint to her parents to convince them that she would become an actress. And guess what? Well, it all worked out.
I created a 5-year business plan presentation of what could happen if they let me start auditioning for movies. Because I was like, how can I communicate to them on a level that they'll take me seriously and they'll understand?
Before long, she and her family, they were packing up all their belongings and setting out for Los Angeles to accomplish Sydney's dreams. But first, well, it would turn into something more like a nightmare. Now, after Sydney and her family moved to LA, well, things didn't exactly go as she had planned in her PowerPoint presentation. Now, instead, finances, they quickly became a huge stress on both of her parents. And before long, well, her dad, he had lost his job, and the family, they were closing in on bankruptcy. And just like that, by the time she had turned 16, well, her parents, they divorced. Now, both of them would tell Sydney that what had happened to their family wasn't her fault, but that's something easier said than necessarily believed. Now, for his own part, well, Sydney says that her brother, well, he most definitely blamed her for what had happened, and then things, well, they began to spiral further out of control. Now, Sydney says that she would run into the arms of men to try to fill the growing void inside her that was looking for love to replace the emptiness of her home. Now, she and her father, they drifted further and further apart over the ensuing years, which broke her heart most of all. Now, ultimately, however, her relationships with her mother and her brother, they would bounce back, and those would be stronger than ever. But after everything that had happened to her family, well, Sydney, she still had one hope to fix everything, she told Cosmopolitan. "When we left Spokane for LA, we had to sell the house I grew up in. It was my mom's dream house. So when I turned 18, it wasn't even a year after my parents divorced, and I thought, I'm gonna buy this house back and I'll save everyone. I'll get my family back together. Turns out I had nowhere near enough money." Okay, my math's a little off. They divorced when she was 16, she tried to buy it at 18, so about a year and a half. Anyway, not a big one, right? Let's pretend no one else saw that. Let's move on. Now, after realizing this, well, Sydney says she's never cried more in her entire life. Now, as for her acting career, well, let's face it, it wasn't going as easy as she had planned. Now, throughout high school in Los Angeles, she had picked up a few small roles in television series like Grey's Anatomy, The Middle, and Pretty Little Liars. but still nothing that substantial. Undeterred, Sydney, she kept her head down and she kept pushing through, knowing that at some point someone would notice her talents and believe in her. Well, in 2018, it finally happened. When Sydney booked her supporting role as Alice on the series Sharp Objects, well, she finally got to act beside one of the biggest idols she had ever dreamt of. I'm talking about Amy Adams. Working on this series with Amy became a turning point in Sydney's career, and it taught her one of her most valuable lessons. She mentioned to Elle, "It was surreal to get to work so closely with an actor I've idolized since childhood. Now, seeing Amy with her daughter, it showed me it's possible to be a successful actor and to have a stable and healthy personal life." I don't know about that. Being a YouTuber, I just got married. Maybe I'm turning stable. I wasn't for a while. Now, within the span of a few short months in 2018, well, Sydney, she would go from an unknown commodity to an actor with a bunch of projects on the air. Now, outside of Sharp Objects, she would also appear in the Netflix series Everything Sucks and the critical juggernaut The Handmaid's Tale.
Are you trying to eat it?
I'm not that good.
Well, yeah. Okay.
And now that things were really beginning to pick up for Sydney, well, she'd land her biggest project yet, the role of Cassie Howard on HBO's Euphoria. And believe it or not, well, she did it all with one single audition tape. With one single audition tape. There we go. See, I wouldn't have got it. Of course I would. Even Nate, or even Nate's dad. Maybe I get the dad role, but who wants that one? Anyway, let's move on. Now, after its premiere in 2019, well, Euphoria would become one of the HBO's most popular series of all time. And to deliver a performance that's truly resonating with her fans, well, Sydney, she undertook a very thorough examination of her character by creating an interactive character book. Now, she actually does this for every role she lands, filling a scrapbook with art, images, stickers, and more forms of visual memories that help her define the character from the time of their birth. Pretty intense. And as for all those scenes in the series that require her to get naked, well, Sydney says that for the most part, she's just disappointed in Hollywood's double standard when it comes to nudity. She told Cosmo, "There are hour-long compilations of world-famous male actors with nude scenes who win Oscars and get praised for that work. They just take off their tops so they can get a role. There's such a double standard, and I really hope I can have a little part in changing that." So there you go, fellas. Cat's out of the bag. She might do it again. Again, I'm married. Let's move on. Now, to help her take control of her own career, well, Sydney has recently set up her own production company called 50/50 Films. Now, her focus at this point is to adapt women-led stories and stretch out the business side of her brain, as opposed to simply, doing the creative. Now, one of her first up-and-coming projects is the HBO series called The Player's Table, which will not only star Sydney, but also her real-life best friend, which it turns out is actually Halsey. Halsey be getting with everyone. Jeezy, MGK, Sydney Sweeney. I don't know, those are people that I like. Anyway, let's move on.
About a year ago, I really wanted to start a production company and I just didn't know where to start. And I was like, I want to find properties to be able to produce. And so I started 50/50 Films and I started getting sent some books that hadn't been released yet.
I actually know someone who knows her. It's not the 6 Degrees thing. Me and Halsey are She watched her before they were famous. Anyway, let's move on. Now, more recently, well, Sydney, she's also broken the heart of every single man on this planet when she agreed to marry her longtime boyfriend, Jonathan Davino. Congrats. I'm just being funny. He's a lucky man. Jonathan, congrats to you. And well, not only is Sydney jaw-droppingly beautiful, but with the crazy amount of initiative she's shown throughout her life, well, I think the sky's the limit into what she can accomplish. She's probably not a runway model. She's too much Kate Upton and not in the height department, just everywhere else. Alright guys, I'm wrapping up this video here. My name is Michael McCrud. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Before They're Famous, and I'll see you guys in another video. That was a boom! I picked this video, you can tell.